What's going on today, everybody? So I've been having a lot of problems with our dryer again. This is the fourth time we've had problems with it, but this is a common thing with these Samsung dryers because their drums are super thin. So the problem I'm having is we've got a really loud thump going on when we're drying any type of clothes. It could be a big load, small load, whatever. So what it actually is there's a seam where the drum goes around. They have to mate the two pieces together and they have a weld. Well, that weld is inherently the weak part of the system. So what you have to do is you can go online, you can rebuild or get a new drum straight from Samsung, or you can actually go ahead and fix it yourself. Now, this is just temporary because like I said, this is the fourth or fifth time I've actually gone ahead and fixed this, but it holds up for a while. The next time I do this, I'm gonna go get some flat stock steel and make that ridge around the whole outside thicker so it has actually some load capacity to it. Problem with that is you get an unweighted drum then that can cause problems. We will see, but for right now I'm just doing the temporary fix. It's got a crack in it. I'm just gonna take a welder and weld up a seam real quick, grind it down so the wheels have somewhere to go and not just slap the drum so it'll hit a huge bump. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll show you the easiest way I've found to take apart the dryer and get to the internals. It's real easy. All you're really gonna need is a flathead, maybe. The flathead's for prying, but you definitely need a number 2 Phillips. Number 2 Phillips is basically the only tool that you need. Up top there are 2 prongs that hold the front plate on that you might have to use a flathead. So you're down here, you're getting your tools, you might as well grab a flathead and a Phillips. So without further ado, let's go upstairs and check it out. So this is the culprit right here. So right here, you can see that crack forming. And when it comes around and hits the wheel, it opens that crack up. Now you can see a whole bunch of the crack because all the pressure is on this side of the drum and no pressure is on that side. So then comes around, hits the wheel, now goes to the other side. So that's the problem that we're having with it thumping. Now there is another probable cause that I will show you that I've already fixed. But this one's really easy to diagnose because you just open up the drum and you take your hand and you take one of the blades and you can just spin it around until you see, or you can actually audibly hear just by spinning it by your hand. Now, you can obviously see how big the crack is with this one, so it's really easy to diagnose what the problem is. But you can also see the other part, which is the idler bearing, idler pulley, however you want to look at it, but it can also be a problem. Mine's been fixed. I went ahead and fixed it my own way, and it works a lot better than the factory way. So without further ado, we'll get to this. I'll show you how to take this apart. I went ahead and I like power tools, so I got a power tool, power Phillips head, and that's the only thing I should really have. So step number 1, unplug the dryer. We don't want anything to happen when we're going after any of these electronics. So unplug it from the wall and we'll start from there. So the first set of screws are going to be on the back side here. There's one right here and then one down on the other side that have to come off. These two that are on the black, they do not have to come off. But these two, there's an identical one on the other side, And this will release a little bracket that's held in there. So first thing, undo those two. So now that we've got the screw loosened up, I'll go ahead and take the screw out. And then you can take this little bracket out, but what I do is I just leave it in here that way, and then put the screw back in, so that way I know where both those pieces go. This is the part that gets a little bit dicey, per se. You actually have to get a good amount of pressure on the top lid for it to come off, and it's held in by a couple clips, and the ones that are the hardest are the ones at the front. So the back will kind of pry up, but the front will really stick. So I'll show you how I go about it, and we'll see if it comes off pretty easy. So undid the back screws already. This is the back, this is the front. We can already lift this back side up a little bit. Now you can see we can lift this back side up, but this front side doesn't want to come out too easy. There's a couple pegs. All you have to do is just give it a good little pull. But be careful, because there's also connections on the back side here that the wires go to. They go to this main unit. So keep that up there, but what I do is I just take this and I move it backwards a little bit, because I have to get to a set of bolts up front here. Now these bolts are the ones that are going to come off and take the front faceplate off. So that's all I have to get to, is to take this front faceplate off, and that top can stay there the way it is. Now that I've got the top set back, I can access these screws. Now there's one right here, and then this little tab has to actually go down for the front piece to come up and over. So there's a screw right there, and then a screw right here that we have to undo. Now those aren't the only ones. Actually on the front, you have to have your door open. So open up your door, and then there's 1, 2, 3 screws that have to come off as well. While you're in here, you might as well just take your lint out too, your lint trap out. But take those 5 screws out, and the front plate should lift up and come off. Now with that being said, there's 2 wires right here that need to come off too. Now that we've got those screws out, this is where the flathead could come in handy for you. So this little barb right here has to come. This part is attached to this back part, and this top part has to come up and over this piece. So you can push it down or kind of push it back and try to pry it out, but this is where the flathead comes in handy. Now mine seems to have enough slack on it to where I can just push down on it and then pull it back, and it seems to come loose for me. So now that that's out of there, we'll do it to the other side, and the whole front fascia should come off. So I forgot on this top that there's actually one in the middle that's that has to come out. So there's 3 on top, 1, 2, 3, and then the 2 tabs that have to come off before this can come out. Now when you pull it off, it will want to fall out, and then you want to lift it up. But first, you have to undo this plug. That's just pressure in there. There's no clipping to do or anything like that, but this one will just pull out, and it's on the back side right there, and it's for the door sensor. It's right there. So now that those are off, we can go back to the back of these cables, and this blue and white wire has to come out. You could try to pull it out of here, but I haven't had very much luck with it. It's a little LED, but there's a clip that's right back and right back in there. So there's that little white clip that's back that has the blue and white wires going to it. That one does have a pressure clip that you have to push down on the top, but it will come out and this whole front face will come off. Now this little wire tie has to be undone and it's just twisted together so that we can get this wire out, because this clip goes with this front gray piece that has to come out. So now to take this front gray piece all the way out, there's 4 screws in each of the corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, that have to come out, and then the whole thing lifts up and then we'll pull out. But first we have to get to this bottom air vent that has 3, that has 1, 2, and 3 bolts to it. Also there's a white connector down here that has to come off. Now if you're having a lot of troubles trying to get this piece off, it's probably because the lint trap is still in it. The lint trap actually hangs down, if we put it back in here, hangs way down into where this actually sits, and it goes inside of there. So if you're having a lot of trouble getting that off, definitely take your lint trap out, and that should be it. Now onto the 4 screws on the outside, and that will all lift out. So there we go, we've officially gotten the whole front face piece off, as well as the actual drum holder. So now it's time to actually remove the drum itself. But it has a little belt on it that spins it around. Now to get to that belt is actually underneath the drum, and it's on a spring that has an idler pulley on the end of it that you have to pull back, get the belt off, and then it will relieve the tension and allow you to remove this whole drum. So here's the belt that actually drives it, and I'm going to save that, set that in here. And here's the actual drum that's all taken out. This is our culprit. This is the part I've been having problems with, if you could tell, with it thumping around. So we'll go ahead and try to fix this a little bit better, and maybe we can actually keep it going for a little bit. Since it was really hard to show you with the drum actually inside, this is what the belt actually rides on. This is the motor for the belt driven part of it, and then this is the idler pulley. So this idler pulley sits all the way up here, probably in there somewhere, and runs down, goes around the belt, comes up and over the idler pulley, and then goes out and around the belt or the drum, and then comes back down. So you want to go ahead and push this back, get that belt worked off, and then this will just sit down, the belt will slack off. Make sure your belt comes out around this motor, and then you should be able to pull your drum out. Now if your idler pulley does not look like this, don't worry, because this is actually a Subaru idler pulley, and it's been working way better than the plastic one that I had before. I went through 2 plastic ones trying to figure out why it was having troubles, but this seems to be a weak point in the system as well as the drum apparently. But we went ahead and put a Subaru idler pulley on here, and it's been working completely fine. Just put a couple of tack welds on it and it works great. So here's what is actually making all of the noise in the back of the dryer itself. Is that crack will come down and one side will be high and then the other one will come through and they'll smack across each other. That's what's causing the thump in the drum part, if the drum's broken. And it will happen on both of these. But with the drum perfectly aligned, hopefully it wouldn't do that. So now we'll go ahead, and it's always a good time to go through and clean all this stuff out because there's a heater element in here that gets really hot. You might as well clean it out. You've got it open. So we'll go ahead, clean this, weld that up, and see if we can get this working again. So here's a lot better look at what's the actual problem. You can see that these two pieces have actually come completely apart all the way down, and it looks like it's coming down into here. And I've first started out, this seam was the problem. That's where I was having a lot of my problems come from. You kind of can tell, but it's not very thick at all material. So we'll go ahead, and it's really hard welding on this stuff because it's so thin. So what I've been doing is just doing little spot welds and making sure that it cools off, because it'll cause you to have problems and burn holes if you're not going slow enough. But now if you have to, sometimes I had, like the second time I did this, I had to actually remove one of the fins from the inside. And all it is 4 screws on the outside, and that fin will actually go through to the inside. So that'll be easy to remove, and then you'll be able to weld without ruining it. Sweet! So it's probably well worth noting that I've tried to JB weld it. Now, this was the first attempt before I actually had a welder here. So I tried to JB weld it and it cracked, I think even on the first spin. It did not make it very long on just the drum weight. Imagine if I put a load of laundry in there. There's a whole bunch more weight that actually added to it. So there we go, we've got our crack all filled in. They're definitely not the prettiest welds, but with this being so thin, and it's just, it'll fight you the whole way. So, got it done, ground it down a little bit. Now I'm gonna go in and check to see if this is gonna be a loud bump or if it's something that's gonna be livable, because this is where the wheel is going to now hit. So if it's causing it to thump pretty good, I'll have to come back and grind this down a little bit. But I don't want to grind it down too much, because then I'm going to probably have another problem. That might be why I'm having these problems over and over again, is because I'm grinding this down too much. So definitely want to make sure that I have enough material there to hold it all together, but also want to have enough down that it's not going to cause a problem. So now probably the most important part of this whole thing is to make sure that there's no burrs or anything on any of the welds that you have on the inside, because this is where all the clothes are going to fit. And if you've got a burr sticking up, it's going to catch a piece of fabric and it's just going to hang on to it, it's going to rip it. So go through and do a thorough check on everything, especially on the side that's opposite of this, if you have this side up welding, because all that slag and stuff falls down. Now you can see that I've got a little excited with the heat. I probably should have taken this fin out, but it melted the backside of that fin a little bit. Should be okay, and all these seem decent enough that I can run my finger over. A good test is take a rag over it and rub it against and see if it snags on anything. And if it does, grind that down. Go slow with this though, because you don't want to puncture through a little bit on this outside where there's no weld. It'll just go straight through. So definitely take your time. Make sure that this inside is perfectly smooth, or that at least that there's no burrs on it. That will save you a lot of hassle down the road, because it will rip shirts up and it will ruin things. So now we've got everything ground down to where it's acceptable and it's not going to thump on me. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall that wool liner or seal on the outside. All I'm going to do is just take some super glue to it, make sure that it sticks a little bit, and it should be held in enough by friction, but the super glue is just to kind of help. It does have glue on it right now, so might as well put glue back on it. So to reinstall all this, you just go back through in the reverse order of taking it all apart. One thing I will mention though, it is very worth the time to put the belt on before you put the drum back in, because it's such a hassle to get on after the drum's already in. So definitely put the belt on and then put the drum in. It makes it a lot easier. Another helpful tip is when you've got to this step, you've put your front plate on, and you've got the back in the wheels, the fronts in the wheels. Before I even put the screws in, I'll go ahead and spin this and make sure that everything spins free. I've got the belt on there. I can hear the motor kind of whipping around down there. You can also tell if the motor's connected because there's a direct shaft between this fan, exhaust fan, and the motor. And if you're spinning this, the motor will also be spinning. So if the belt's on correctly, this should be spinning. Now that that's all in there, everything's looking good, I'm gonna go ahead and connect these two, because this seems to be the one that I forget all the time. So I've connected that one, and now I'll put the screws in and connect the other two once I get the top close to being put back together. So we're at that stage. We're gonna go finish putting on all these other parts and hopefully turn it on. So the dryer still has a little bit of a thump, but it's also a livable thump. And I know that that thump is because there's extra material actually making it thicker in that area. So I will live with it. It's close enough. Now we can actually use this dryer again. And it's actually usable instead of not being usable. So without further ado, I'm gonna end the video. Get out of here. Hopefully this is helpful. If you've got any other tips and tricks on any other appliance, I mean, this seems to be the only appliance that's given me problems, but if you definitely have a suggestion or a different way, or maybe you've got a tip or a trick that worked out better for you, leave it in a comment down below. Like the video if you found it helpful, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.